Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do something I've been saying I'm going to do for quite a while. I'm going to do a shorter version of it, but basically I'm going to explain how to make use of your red blips, which is the cool ambush ability. Now, this is one of the most important things about learning this army. Genestealer cool really rely on this. It's important for offensive reasons. It's important even more so for defense. You've got to learn how to do it because it'll keep your guys out of the firing line turn one, which is what stops you from being absolutely smashed. Just as importantly as your defensive, deployment, it's also good to know that you can use your red blips to deploy your guys in an offensive manner, which lets you get them up the board, get into melee combat turn one without even breaking a sweat. I'm going to show you the tricks how to do that. It involves your Goliath trucks. I've explained it before with a little sort of demonstration, but this is going to be the proper one. It's also important to show you how to spread out across the board once you deploy, how to move up, how to take ground, and just how to basically, get in the opponent's face. That's how you win games, or at least in my experience, that's how you do. So let's go over the red blips quickly. You get one of these for every single unit. That's a squad or a singular model, like a vehicle or character. And you don't have to use them. You can deploy the standard way if you want. But, I would say you definitely want to do this. It'll be stupid not to. So let's say here I've got my Metamorphs. There'll be one blip for them. There'll be one blip for my neophyte hybrids. There'll be one blip for each character individually. So the Clamorverse, the Magus, the Primus, and the Patriarch, and then there'll be one for each of the vehicles. Now I'm going to start my Acolyte hybrids here in one of the trucks. So they won't get a red blip, they're just in it, they use that blip to reference. So during the deployment phase, obviously your opponent will put down one, or it depends on who's going first, but instead of placing down a squad, you will place a single red blip. Now, you don't have to make your mind up at this point which squad, vehicle, or whatever is going to pop up from that red blip. You can change your mind when the time comes. Now, it's important to think ahead. What do we actually want to achieve here? Let's say we want to get these 10 acolytes into combat turn one. So what we're going to be doing is getting them in a truck. Obviously, they'll start inside it. And then we can use this red blip to deploy forwards and then get out and then advance and then charge. What we also want to achieve is to have our characters within range to do their psychic powers, their buffing auras. Then we also need squads to back them up. So the neophytes are going to be close to the characters to make sure that they can do unquestioning loyalty. And then also we're going to have the hybrid metamorphs moving up behind to be our second wave. What you can also do is put your Patriarch and your characters into a truck as well. The character takes up 5 slots. Each of the characters only one. So you could easily get the Patriarch, the Clamorverse, the Primus, and the Magus in a truck turn one. Now, I know that you might think that's a little bit dangerous, but you can use certain stratagems to keep the truck behind cover, out of line of sight. So even if, the other player goes first, you can almost guarantee that they're not going to get shot, whatever happens. Obviously, be careful if they've got mortars or hive guard or something, because obviously then line of sight does not matter. So here is just like a dummy setup of how you might deploy a few blips. I've got 3 here behind cover, so that's going to be obscured. And then I've got 2 here, which are going to be for my 2 trucks. And then another one here, I'm thinking another infantry squad. So let's just do the trucks first. So the rule is that you can do trucks and other singular units like characters 1 inch out of your deployment zone. So from the blip to the back of the hull, that's got to be 1 inch. So I'd probably do one here and I'd do one here. So straight away, you've made up a certain amount of ground which gets you into the middle of the board. That's before they move or before anyone gets out. Okay, so let's say you want to deploy an infantry squad from a red blip. The way that the rule specifically is written allows you to place the first model within a squad outside of the deployment zone by 1 inch. So let's say he's the squad leader. The first one I put down, he can go 1 inch forwards outside of the zone. Then the rest of the squad has to be within the usual squad coherency limit. So as long as this guy is within 2 of him, and they've got to be behind the line. This is the part which people, often debate, but you have to just read exactly how it is written. And that's what allows you to get the Goliath trucks outside of your zone. It simply says, take the first model in the unit and place it within 1 inch of the red blip. So it goes down, then you read the next bit. Now it says, now place the next model and the next model and the next model within coherency and behind the deployment zone. Okay, so if it is a singular thing like a truck or a character, so for example, I could place my patriarch out by 1 like that. Anything like that you can do outside of your zone. Remember, it's important to note that you do not deploy from the red blips in the deployment phase. It's in the movement phase. A lot of, judges and stuff, or people who think that they know the rules better than you, they will say that you can't be outside of your deployment zone in the deployment phase. Well, the thing is, it's not the deployment phase. Your deployment phase will simply look like that. Then the game starts. Then you place them either, at the end of your opponent's movement phase, if they go first, or at the start of your movement phase, if you go first. Okay, so it does not matter about that part. So as I just said, if your opponent goes first and you're really worried about, let's say you were planning to put these trucks here straight out the front and go for the offensive, if you're worried they're going to get shot to shit, there is one thing you can do which is really useful. You pay the 1 CP stratagem for Meticulous Uprising. That allows you to move up to 3 blips 12 inches in any direction within your zone. So suddenly this truck you were going to put here, you can move it 12 inches, let's say that far, and now you can get him behind cover when he deploys. Don't forget that if your opponent is going first, they will have to move before you reveal your blips. So let's say this Macarius, he's going to come forward, I don't know, let's say that far. You now get the ability to look at the lines of sight just before he's shooting. So you know exactly where he's going to be able to see and where he can't. So you can move, let's say, one of these blips here. You could move it behind this wall using Meticulous Uprising. And then you could place a truck here, solidly knowing that the lines of sight aren't going to allow you to be shot. So yeah, that's how you keep your guys out of the firing line. You know exactly where the lines of sight are. You can just keep those guys safe. But what I would try and stop yourself from doing is if they go first, don't bring all your blips backwards and hide at the back, and just think that you've tricked them, because then you're going to be too far back down the board and then you won't be able to get the movement to get back up there and score flags. So let's say that we are taking the first turn. We're going to straight away place our assault troops. We want our Goliath trucks straight up the front because we know they're going to try and take as much ground with both them and the infantry, and the characters are going to back them up. So let's say our deployment might look something like this. We've got one squad that's popped up here. They're the Metamorphs with hand flamers. I've got the 2 trucks. One of these is going to have my Acolyte hybrids with the rock drills. Another one is going to have my characters in, which is the Primus, the Magus, the Clamovis, and the Patriarch himself. Then I've got my 10 neophytes here, also behind cover. They're going to be pushing forwards as well. Now, if you really want to be a sneaky bastard, there's some things you can do with your models. For example, let's say you want to get a squad out of this truck and you want to get them up the board as far as you can. What you can do is, on your models, do things like, let's say, put on, a ram at the front. There's nothing really against the rules in there. If you swap that out there, when you deploy this, you've got 1 inch from the blip, but you're already probably another inch forwards. Every little does help. But anyway, let's assume that we're not going to be sneaky like that and we'll use the one we had on before. So at this point, this is the start of our movement phase. We've got our units down. Now we remove the red blips, and it's all good to go. So the first thing you're going to do is deploy the 10-man Acolyte squad with the rock drills, or whatever the hell you want to give them. That's certainly what I would recommend anyway. They're going to jump straight out of their truck. Obviously, you've got 3 inches there. I mean, that looks about right to me. So that already gives them another bit of distance that they've gained across the board. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is jump out with the characters. You've got to think about the auras, but not just where they are now, but where they're going to be after all you guys move to where they're going to be. So this infantry squad here of the Acolytes, they are going to be up there. So they need to have the Primus nearby at the point when they are fighting, right behind them, so that they benefit from his buff. So let's get that movement done first. You'll be advancing these guys, and then they're going to be able to advance and charge later. Either you can use a psychic power called Psychic Stimulus, or you can pay 1 CP if that fails to do genetic lineage. That will ensure that you definitely can charge. Okay, so let's roll our advance for the Acolytes. We get a 1. I would probably re-roll that with a CP just to make sure that they get there. A 5, that's much better. So we can count up the amount of distance they can make here. They're 6 inches move normally, plus 2 inches if you're a twisted helix, which I would obviously recommend. So that gets up to 8. Plus 1 from the Clamovis, that's 9. Then plus your roll of 5, that gets us up to 14 inches. Now you can see straight away how far 14 inches gets you from that starting point. So technically speaking, if we didn't re-roll it, I'd say you could probably still get away with the Metamorphs. At the moment, they're only going to need a 2-inch charge to make it to their target. So next we're going to want to move up our characters. The Primus is the next most important because he needs to be up there behind these guys, giving them the buff for melee. So we'll roll his advance. He gets a 6, that's great. So 6 plus 6 plus 2 plus another one from the Metamorphs. He's going to be moving 15 inches. So for the sake of it, let's just assume that gets him there. Then you've got the Metamorphs himself, the Magus, the Patriarch. I wouldn't bother getting them too far up, maybe somewhere around the middle of the board here. And then you can also shield them with your trucks when they move up behind. So let's say I move the characters up to there roughly. Next thing that I can do is start to move up the trucks. Now this one here, we're going to move him 12. So he's going to get to, let's say, roughly there. The idea here could be that he could then charge the Bullgrin. I know that you're thinking, well, why the hell would you do that? But it's because he's pretty much useless now. You know, he's dumped his load and now he's just simply a distraction. If he survived rushing into them next turn, then he stopped them from doing something like getting involved into a fight over here, maybe coming for your Patriarch. At the back of the board over here, I'll be rolling advance for these guys to see how far up the field we can get them. We want them up here behind our characters so they can do unquestioning loyalty. So, an advance roll for them. They rolled 2, so it's going to be 6 plus 2 plus 2. That is 10. Don't worry about the fact that you probably won't be able to get in range with their guns. They're shit anyway. Shotguns are what you want to have them equipped with. Don't give them any heavy weapons, maybe grenade launchers if you want. They are simply here to provide protection for these characters. Now you'll see that I've kept them within 3 inches there of the familiars for the Patriarch. So basically, even though he's not within 3 inches, the familiars are. So let's say something in the back here shoots at the Patriarch somehow, then these guys here can still take the unquestioning loyalty rolls for the Patriarch because they're within that distance there. Last thing over here, this truck that dumped out the Acolyte hybrid, so it's now empty. What you can do is move these hybrid Metamorphs into the back. They've got to obviously be within a certain distance to all embark, but you could advance them to get them there. Now it's full again, and then you could do a 12-inch move, which gets it up here. So straight away you can see how I'm getting the Patriarch up the board and his boys, but I'm blocking off certain angles. So let's say a melee threat came from over here, or he wanted to line up some shooting. You know, it wouldn't be able to target the Patriarch because these things are now blocking it, and he won't be able to get around to do melee with him. Keep in mind also you're going to want other things in your army to stay at the back here because you need to be, scoring backfield objectives, maybe doing some secondaries, stuff like that. But for now, we're focusing on the main attack. So now you need to do your psychic stuff, and this is where it becomes pretty interesting because there's a few combos here to really turn this into like a proper mince machine attack. Now, keep in mind that the enemy might have denies. So I've placed this guy here. He's definitely not a Primaris Psyker, but it's just something I've found that can be a stand-in for now. So they're going to basically want to deny your key powers, but they might not know what they all do. So I'd say it's certainly a good idea to try and bait out certain things early on, which aren't as important. So let's say first up, we wanted to give these guys the ability to advance and charge. We know that if it fails, we can give them genetic lineage so that they'll definitely be able to do it. But obviously we want to try and save our CP if possible. So I'd say the key ones need to come from your Magus. You can pay for 1 CP, which is the Cult Psych. That gives him or her the ability to have +1 to their cast, and they also know another power. So things that I would give them is Psychic Stimulus, Mass Hypnosis, and the real important one, Might from Beyond. Let's say that they're casting Psychic Stimulus on the Acolytes at the front. You need a 6, so that's a 7 +1 from Cult Psych. That gets you up to 8. So let's assume that he does not deny that, and they get it. So that's fine, they can advance and charge now. Also, they fight first. The next thing you want to do is maybe go through your non-important ones. For me, I choose things on the Patriarch like Mind Control or Mental Onslaught. So Mental Onslaught, I'll usually do that into a vehicle. I mean, we've got to assume that we're probably going to kill this thing with the guys here, so maybe it'll be a bit wasted, but he could soften up the target. So you could do Mental Onslaught on that, or you could do Mind Control on it. You'll probably win, and then you can turn its guns on, let's say, the Bullgrin. Also remember that the Magus, if you give them Cult Psych, any other Psykers, such as the Patriarch, within 3 inches, I think it might be 6, get +1 to their cast as well. So, you know, by paying for that on the Magus, you're not only giving him +1, but you're also giving the Patriarch +1 to cast and deny if they stand next to each other. So obviously the most important one is Might from Beyond. Let's say that they haven't got any more denies left. So I'd now cast Might from Beyond from the Magus onto these guys. Let's assume that it goes off. They now get +1 strength and +1 attack, which is the most important part. Lastly, I would also do Mass Hypnosis. Now this is what prevents Overwatch. It also makes the unit fight last and also a -1 to hit. So this you're probably going to want to put on the thing that you're charging, obviously, because those big Vulcan Mega Bolt things can tear the shit out of people. You don't get as many shots as you used to with them now, which is thankfully, you know, massive savior, but it still will probably mince up some of these, and you don't want that to happen. So if you don't get Mass Hypnosis, then you should always have a backup plan. I usually think of some of these empty Goliath or even the full one, use them as battering rams. So what you could do is declare a charge with them first. I mean, it's not exactly ideally placed, but that's like a 9-inch charge. You can do him here. That thing is not going to kill it in Overwatch. So you could get there, he's now tied up, and then these guys are free to, you know, move up and not get shot. Also bear in mind that I like to run the Amulet of the Void Rim on my Patriarch. That's the relic that I give him. This gives him a 4+ invul to shooting only, not in melee. It's 5+ in melee still. But it also means that he cannot be Overwatched. So one thing you can do is, I mean, I didn't really take into account how far he could have got up the board here. But you could have very easily got him to, let's say, somewhere like this. And then if you fail the Mass Hypnosis and you're really worried about Overwatch, you could charge him first and then he will definitely tie up the thing. Another thing to remember here is that because you've got the Clamorverse up front, he's going to be given +1 to charge, not just to the troops, but also to the trucks. So that is going to help there. If you really need to get them in and block something, he's going to be buffing them too. If you did decide to rush the Patriarch up and smash into something to take away the Overwatch, I would say you've really got to be careful, because then the guys who are going to be giving him unquestioning loyalty will be at the back here. They're going to be out of range. They won't be able to help him. You might end up using some of these guys to take wounds from him or something like that. And he can become just really vulnerable very quickly. So anyway, let's assume that there's a very quick shooting phase. We've got, you know, twin autocannons on these. They might be able to soften the bullruns a bit. You've also got the hand flamers for the Metamorphs who are in this truck. That's another 12 inches. So technically speaking, that distance there is 12 inches. Any point on the hull to the closest model, they could flame the bullruns as well. That's a nice way to just, you know, soften them up. These guys at the front, usually I give only one squad just auto pistols, because I know that that first squad is going to be advancing no matter what in the first phase. So those hand flamers are wasted. They're quite expensive now. So just, you know, leave them out on that squad. You won't use them. So moving into the charge phase, let's assume that these guys are not going to fail that charge. You know, that's 2 inches. You can always re-roll it. You've got +1 from the Clamorverse there. It's going to happen. Even if you're further back, you know, it's almost definitely going to happen. Just keep in mind as well, if they rush forwards, you want to have at least maybe one of the basic guys just tag back a little bit, because if he stays within 6 inches of the Patriarch, then he's going to keep his morale, you know, auto pass bonus. Just before you go into the fight phase, you want to do your other charges. Let's say we could get a truck in here to keep these guys tied up. Maybe that way, just to kind of make sure that they don't sneak around after they consolidate. I mean, if they interrupt, it doesn't really matter. This thing's not going to do any damage in melee anyway. So you'd be into the fight phase. Then you're going to have 3 attacks for each rock drill. And these will be +1 to hit from the Primus. And you'll be re-rolling ones because you've got a cool icon guy in there. So here's your result. You're re-rolling any ones. So all of those will hit. So let's assume that they've all hit there. Now to wound, you've got reroll 1s from the Primus. So the wounding on 3s against that. They are strength 5 base because they're Twisted Helix. Times 2, that's 10. +1 from Might from Beyond, that is 11. So our wound rolls. Reroll any 1s. Thankfully quite a few. So the 2s fail. That's 3 fails there. These all go through. -3 AP on the big tank. So we're going to be saving on 6s. This is as if the other guy was doing it. Okay, so he doesn't make any saves. each rock drill does 1 damage each inherently. So there you see we've got a 9 damage straight away. But for each one of these, now we get to roll and we can get consecutive mortal wounds. So each one rolls, you get a 2+, that's a mortal wound. Then you roll again. If you get a 3+, and then a 4+, and a 5+, and a 6+. So you can get up to, like, 5 mortal wounds there if you roll well. So let's make a note. In the back of our arm, we've got 9 damage through inherently. So the first drill on a 2+. Yep, so that's a mortal wound. Now you need a 3+. Yep, that's another mortal wound. You need a 4+. No. Okay, so we got another roll 2 there. So that means we're up to 11 wounds. Then you do the next drill. You do the same again. 2+. Yep. 3+. No. That one finishes. Then you start again. Nope, that one does not. 2+. Yep. 3+. Yep. 4+. Yep, and then you do a 5+, 6+. So you can see how many wounds you can get through on this. The best thing about the rock drills is that they don't care about things like Duty Eternal on Dreadnoughts. They don't care about Death Guards -1 damage reduction. Anything that reduces damage by 1, these guys will fucking mince it because they don't get flattened like the rock swords, which do flat 2 damage. Those things are pretty useless against some of those meta enemies. Don't forget, after that, you've also got your other guys in the gang. They've got their rending claws. They're going to get 3 attacks each because they've got Might from Beyond on. The leader's going to get an extra attack. And then those guys have also got their cultist knives. So there's another 6 attacks hidden in there. Granted, they're 0 AP, but you might finish someone off with them. Now, I've chosen a pretty durable target here. This Makaros Vulcan, I think they've got 22 wounds off the top of my head. I don't think they've got as many as a Baneblade. I mean, I don't bring this thing anymore to any games because they suck after they nerfed it. But yeah, basically you can see how these guys will put out a ridiculous amount of damage on big things like this. The only things you have to watch out for are really high invuln units and also things which have a feel no pain. Now, we've had the hybrid Metamorphs hidden away in this truck here. And you might ask, when do I use hybrid Metamorphs over things like the rock drill guys? Well, the answer is, let's say, for example, you want to fight Bulgrin or something like that. They've got high invuls. If this Psyker here can cast Psychic Barrier on them, they're going to have an invuln of 3+, and they're going to have inherent saves of the slab shields of a 2+, and also ignoring anything with -1 AP. So straight away you can see they are going to really deflect things like the rock drills and just be stubborn to kill. You want 1 damage things. Now the Metamorphs, who I'll bring onto the table in a minute, they've all got 1 damage weapons with very little AP, and it's just all about the amount of attacks you can get. So let's say that in that fight phase, let's say these Bulgrin, they killed this truck, or destroyed it, whatever, and then in the player's turn they went after our Acolytes and our Primus. So they could be moving over here and getting involved in a fight. Let's also assume that maybe these guys have killed the tank, so that is gone off the board as well. And here we've got a brawl that takes place in the opponent's phase, and they will most likely wipe away all of these Acolytes. Let's also assume that maybe these guys have killed the tank, so that is gone off the board as well. And here we've got a brawl that takes place in the opponent's phase, and they will most likely wipe away all of these Acolytes. So in your turn, what you're going to want to do is, jump out with the hybrid Metamorphs. You've got the hand flamers to use. You can soften them up first. I'm assuming that our Primus is still alive here for some reason. Maybe you took some unquestioning loyalty, roles to keep him alive. So then you want to move these guys up 6 inches, and then you're going to get into combat with these. Remember, try and only fight with 1 infantry squad per turn, because the enemy otherwise, let's say the Bulgrins were over here still, you wanted to jump out and do, or maybe charging the Patriarch over there. If, you fight first over here, you fight the tank, that's the thing you want to kill, then over here the Bulgrins would have interrupted with 2 CP and they would have smashed the shit out of anything before you got a chance to use it. So you've got to restrain yourself. The idea behind bringing this truck in here to whack into them was to keep them busy. Maybe it would stay alive. Maybe then they'll be stuck there doing something that they don't want to be doing. The other player is going to want these boys to be hitting the things they want to kill, the Patriarch, the infantry threats. So anyway, let's assume our guys jump out, they flame them, let's say they charge them, and then you're into combat again. Okay, so when you've got Metamorphs, you've got different loadouts you can take. You can either take double Talons, or you can take 1 Talon and 1 Rending Claw, or you can take Rending Claw and Whip. It really does depend what you want to achieve. Double Talons can get you an insane amount of hits, but they are a bit expensive. So typically I go for just the standard loadout, which is Rending Claw and 1 Talon. So the Talons always get a +1 to hit. You'll be re-rolling ones anyway because of this guy. And the Rending Claws are just standard Rending Claws. Now, the best thing about these guys is that you can get the stratagem from, I think it was in the Greater Good book called Violence Unleashed. That is 1 CP. You'll instantly get an extra attack on each man. So a 10-man squad, they're getting 3 attacks each. The leader gets +1, and then you get another +1 from Violence Unleashed. And you could, for example, put something like Might from Beyond on them. So it's going to increase their strength and another attack. So there's just a ridiculous amount of hits you can get here. The Talon gives them an extra hit. So you've got to think about the Rending Claw as your first one. As you probably know, Rending Claws are -1 AP, but if you roll a 6 to wound, that takes it to -4. It's not really that important against Bullgrim, but it will put them at least onto the Rimborn saves, and a lot of those slab shields will be going away as well. So, you know, it depends what they take the saves on first. Now, Bullgrim are toughness 5. This is what I'm on about when I say that Twisted Helix is important, because these guys will now be base strength 5 instead of 4. Right, so it gives them the ability to wound these nice and easily on a 4+. If you put Might from Beyond on them, from your Magus or wherever has got it, now they'll be wounding them on 3s. It is really important for you to use that cult creed to be able to wound things like Bullgrims, Custodes, Gravis Marines, you know, anything that is toughness 5. There is another power you can make use of that is going to be really helpful in this situation. You can take Mutagenic Deviation, which is the Twisted Helix special psychic power. So your Patriarch could take this, for example. It's one that isn't as essential as the other buffs, like Mass Hypnosis, Psychic Stimulus, and Might from Beyond. So if he, you know, wants to take it as one of his extra ones, then it's not essential. In this situation, it would be amazing. He can cast it onto the Bullgrim. That gives these guys +1 to wound against them. It's only on infantry. So if that was the case, you'd have the Primus here. That means the Rending Claws will be hitting on 2+. The Talons will be hitting on 2+ anyway. But, you know, you could use that to counteract a -1 to hit, perhaps. So you'll be wounding them on 2+. And also that +1 to wound means that any 5s on the Rending Claw become 6s. So 5s and 6s are all going to be -4 AP, which is absolutely sick. So we're going to take a step back now and look at what we've been doing. Basically, by taking the first turn, we've advanced from here all the way up the board. We're already on the verge of the enemy's deployment zone. We've killed something, you know, this big tank here, assuming we could kill it anyway. That's off the board. That's 400 points of their army gone. You're tackling the Bullgrim, which are a massive threat. And then you're just going to keep pushing them up. Now, all the battle is going to be done along this line of the board, which means that all this stuff at the back, we've got that space, we've got the flags. Unless they've got deep strike stuff, they're never going to get over there. Or let's say perhaps something that's a really fast moving flying unit or something. But for the most part, the focus will be here, which means we've taken that space and now we are winning the game. Lastly, this also means that your Patriarch, he's going to be alive still. Hopefully you've got these guys that can be moving up more. They're going to be protecting him. And then when the time comes, you know, some of the key stuff is dealt with, and then you're going to have a showdown later where the Patriarch can finally come out, the gloves come off, and he can fight stuff which is a bit more to your choosing. He's not going to get, you know, his face smashed in by something dangerous. So that concludes my video today. I hope that gives you some ideas of how to use Cult Ambush to be offensive, and also using Meticulous Uprising, for example, at the back. If you want to move those blips, get them behind cover if the opponent goes first. Also, one thing, just remember, if you do go second, you get a 9-inch zoning bubble. That means that this far from every single blip that you're placing, the enemy will not be able to move anything fast like flyers or, you know, jump pack infantry, anything like that. Maybe jet bikes. You won't be able to get them any closer than 9 inches, which really does help prevent any weird charges, or just, you know, let's say those sort of flyers which fly over your stuff and they drop bombs, you know, for mortal wounds. Anything like that is really going to be stopped. Last of all, any questions, just ask, and, you know, I'll try and answer them all in the comments. So thanks for watching.